So moving forward to later in life. So recently last year you graduated from the New England Conservatory with the prestigious artist diploma studying with the legendary Lawrence Lesser, excuse me. Um, but I know that along with Mr. Lesser, you've studied with some very important teachers during your formative years and will continue to do so. So, can you talk a little bit about how each teacher that you studied with left a different musical imprint in your own life?
Yeah, sure. Um, I've always been, I think, very much a searching musician, if that makes sense. Um, I never believed that there was one clear answer to anything, really,
Mm,
somehow. So I chose I chose very different teachers during the years of studying because I was really interested in hearing really different sides of the coin, if that makes sense, as
mm,
to how they relate to music and cello playing and so forth. And before I was studying with Lesser, I studied with a wonderful cellist who I recently actually saw and had a lesson with again,
mm,
whose name is Torleif Thedéen, who's a wonderful Swedish cellist, huge, very warm sound and like extremely singing quality to his playing, and he had a very indescribable kind of quality of helping every student somehow thrive in their
mm,
playing somehow. He would very much change according to which student he was teaching, and adapt into their playing and
mm,
how they felt, and there are also like even something as basic as a every single body is different and every single arm
sure.
is different, so every
Right.
sound is automatically going to be, from a completely natural perspective, is going to
Right.
be unique on its own. And this is what I thought was really special about him, was his way of helping every single student kind of thrive in their voice, somehow, and in their body. It somehow, to me, it kind of felt a little bit like if you go to a really good massage, but just for sound. So a sound massage.
Mm. That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would leave those lessons like, oh, I can breathe again, and so happy about playing, and I felt like my creativity was suddenly, or not suddenly, but it was thriving way more. And Lesser was a very different from that. Lesser was extremely creative and
Mm.
very close to the text, but at the same time weirdly open about the text, in my opinion.
Ah.
Yeah, and for somehow I felt like he's somehow had a sort of way of looking at something which was radical and
Mm,
like with a very strong opinion, but at the
mm,
same time extremely expansive and broad and open-minded in a way, actually. I felt. But he, for me, was way more somehow intellectually stimulate from an intellectually stimulating kind of point of view, whilst Tour Life was maybe more focused on the singing and the body and like the mechanics, the
mm.
physicality
Sure.
part of the cello playing and the spirit behind the music. So those two, they were very much night and day, and I had a great struggle in the beginning of studying with Lesser of finding a way of unifying those things.
Mm,
But
mm,
now, after having studied with them both, I'm extremely happy to have done so because I feel I feel that I have a really big spectrum and an even clearer viewpoint on the fact that um, the answers are hard to find, but when you feel something, that's really when it matters in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I've had really different teachers, and those two were definitely the most different, I would say, and the
Mm,
most dominant
mm,
in my life. And now I'm going to start with Gary
mhm,
Hoffman,
mhm,
Chappelle, which is something I'm really excited about. And I already had a few lessons with him, and I really like him. And
mm,
I mean, by now it's different because I don't know how to explain it. It's sort of more a need for a kind of a mountain of support in a way
mhm,
that I feel would be nice to have. More than like, for example, Lesser was like, now you're very much under a hard education, you know, and
mhm,
I'm here to teach you all these things. But by now I really want to play for someone I really trust, and I really
mm,
trust Gary,
mm,
and his way of looking at things is kind of similar to mine in the sense that he has so many perspectives and a
yeah.
lot of on the other hand, you know, type of sentences when he's
Mm,
teaching. And I feel like this sort of energy is kind of what I'm really happy about getting
yeah.
the next 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Um,
that's wonderful. Yeah, I mean, sorry, what was the name of your first teacher again? It was Mr.
oh no, my well, he wasn't my first teacher.
Hmm,
Before Mr. Lesser was his name was Torleif Thedéen. I can also
okay. Yeah.
Thedéen. Yeah.
No, but I appreciate his thought process because you're right. Like everyone is built differently, so
Yeah.
there's really no one way of playing. Of course,
Yeah.
the bow hold. Even then, like some people have a different bow hold, or
Yeah.
just everyone works differently. And as long as you have a basic grasp of sound and intonation, I feel like it's better to let people play the way that is natural to them because you're
Yeah.
right. I've seen teachers that work in a way where it's like, this is how you play, and you just have to follow that. And I don't know if that way, maybe it worked maybe 50 years ago, but today I don't know if that kind of teaching can work so well.
No, I don't
Um,
know either if it can. Yeah.
yeah.
I think that there's a lot of I think teaching. I was just teaching, and I I love teaching.
Yeah.
And I love teaching, and
Mm.
I think it's a really important thing. But it's also it can really be misused, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like there is so many. You know, if you talk with friends or so many people who's had like really horrifying bad experiences with a
Mm.
teacher or a mentor of some kind, and
Yeah.
it's a really big responsibility,
Right.
and I feel like there I feel like it's coming, but I feel like there's a
Mm.
more general sense of kind of I don't know even how to say it, but the love for the music and
Yeah.
the love for playing
Mm.
is the number one most important thing
Yes.
um,
Yeah.
of all actually. I mean, and through that one gets inspired to get a better intonation or a better sound
Right.
or feel great while playing or
Mhm.
all of those things is just a kind of a reaction to the basic love that that music is
Mm.
one could say.
Yeah.
um so yeah, I feel like there's been tendencies of how do you say of extremely inflexible people, but it's
Mhm.
again that's also like for example when I was studying with Lesser, he was sometimes
Mm.
really inflexible, but I felt like he did that because he knew me and he knew that I could
Mm.
take and he knew that I was able to handle it, and I would actually take it as a motivation to
Mm.
practice even more, and he was right.
Mm.
uh I would leave I would leave a lesson really pissed off sometimes, but I mean, I would practice more. So I mean,
Oh
I
my
guess
God.
he did his job. Uh, um,
Uh,
so I mean, it's a very intricate art form in a way to be teaching because you have to be smart and you need to know
mm,
your student and you need to
yeah.
know how they respond. And when you see that they respond really positively to something, and sometimes it really can surprise. Like I gave a lesson some days ago, and I said something as a sort of a side comment or something at some
Mm,
point while I was teaching, and that changed everything immediately. I was like,
ah,
you
yeah,
know, so it's like it's also following those things I find
yeah,
is good and like expecting the unexpected in a way.
yeah,
Actually. Um and of course it's good to have like a grounded kind of philosophy and so on, but when you see how the different students react really differently to different things, it becomes way more interesting as well because you
yeah.
realize you're dealing with you're dealing with people,
Right.
and like everyone comes from different places, and it's really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. Well, and I love what you shared about Mr. Lesser and how he's very flexible musically, because I think there's almost two different schools of thoughts when it comes to your commitment to doing what's in the score, right? Like some people are very, you just have to do what's in the score and that's like the Bible and you just follow that, right? But I think again, I had a friend that's a pianist, and we talked a couple months ago, and he shared how even Rachmaninoff, when he played his own works, he didn't do everything that was written in the score, right? So it's like, I think, of course, like you don't want to blatantly offend the music or the composer, but I think I think any composer, if they were alive today, they would appreciate a sense of uniqueness to your interpretation of their music, right? I don't think they would be so happy to just listen to everyone playing their music exactly the
same
same way
way.
that, yeah.
Yeah, it's so boring. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's also it's also I feel like a lot of I feel like there's a tendency to think, oh, an accent, so that means duh, And I mean,
Yeah.
an accent doesn't necessarily mean that. I mean,
Yeah.
there's actually incredible amounts of creativity behind what is written, and it can be
Exactly.
interpreted in many different ways. And an accent is so different when you look at it in a score by Schubert,
Hmm.
when you look at it in a score by Stravinsky or something. I mean,
Right.
it
Right.
couldn't be more different. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of creativity to be found even behind what is written, and
Mm.
like so as I said, I don't think there's one truth, but I do think there's many truths in a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and I think going back to what you were talking about with the accent issue, I think sometimes just something with the left hand can make the accent more unique instead of just trying to hammer it with the bow, right? Like
yeah,
even just a vibrato accent can be enough to kind of take care of
yeah,
written in. So yeah, no, that's
sure. If it's
yeah,
I mean, and if it's a like say it's a pianissimo accent or something, it could even
yeah,
just it could be the tiniest of left hand impulses
yeah,
that could
yeah,
change the game at that moment.
right.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
as a cellist, I would love to nerd out with you just talking about these things, but um